said in his address to the nation last week that America is, in his words, far wealthier than it has ever been before. But does that ring true for those looking to start a family? Let's bring in MS Now Maya's Eaglin, who has been speaking with young Americans about their take on the economy. Maya, good to see you. What did they tell you?
Good morning, Jonathan. Yeah, the folks I spoke to told me they feel a bit conflicted about this huge life choice and the realities of how affordable having a kid is right now. Even though Trump spoke positively about the economy, many Americans say their reality is much different. Birth rates continue to fall as families face record child care costs. Take a listen to some of the concerns these young Americans are having.
They say they want us to have children, but the policies in place tells us otherwise. The economy tells us otherwise.
To start a family or expand your family? That's the big question this group of Gen Z and millennials from across the political spectrum is facing right now. Ethan, Amelia, and Kiala have considered becoming parents. Brian and Brittany both have 2 kids each, while Destiny says she will never have children.
It's a difficult choice. With today's economy, just thinking of the cost of living with your mortgage or rent, the health insurance cost.
It's really hard to decipher between, the emotional aspect of wanting kids and the financial aspect and the reality of the resources that we have today.
Let's do one-word answers, rapid fire here. How would you describe today's economy?
Rough.
Volatile.
Hostile. Shaky.
Declining.
Embarrassing.
Majority of Americans are feeling the impact of rising costs at a time when we've also seen a drop in the number of births. From 2007 to 2023, there's been a 16% decrease. One survey found that 70% of Americans think having a kid is unaffordable.
When you're somebody like myself that just came out of college 2 years ago, in terms of the job market is trash. The whole subject of this conversation of having kids, how can you when you can barely sustain yourself?
I feel like as a parent, it gets really scary. Like, we rely on SNAP when it comes down to feeding my kids and myself. I'm in school full time. I applied for the waiting list to get childcare assistance, and the wait list was 3 years. Now that I have 2 kids, it's more than my rent. It's insane.
Making the choice to have a family in Louisiana specifically comes with its own set of challenges. Although there has been some growth in the education system in the Pelican State, it's still ranked number 46 by U.S. News and World Report.
The education is like a big part of it, and like just financial literacy is in thinking about like sex ed. I don't see as much down here or at all.
Louisiana also ranks 49th in the country for childhood poverty and has some of the strictest abortion laws in the nation.
Kiala, I know you have a very personal story that you've been sharing on your social media. I'm wondering if you can kind of share your experience here in Louisiana.
I lost 2 children altogether. But my first child I lost at 20 weeks. It was tap dancing right on the line of, is it considered abortion or is it not? And the insurance wouldn't pay for it because they thought it was. But they had to go back and figure it out because it was technically a miscarriage, and I still had to have a funeral for the child.
Louisiana law requires fetal remains that reach the 20-week mark and are removed by a physician be disposed of by internment or cremation if they don't result in a live birth.
What people don't realize is the whole abortion rules and regulations and the way it's written, a lot of times it's not about you just going to get rid of a child because, oh, I don't want to have it. It's medically necessary.
I would like to say I'm pro-life, but I'm also pro-woman, right? I agree. If it costs your life, that and the baby won't even live or have, you do what you have to do, right? Do I judge people, who have had an abortion? Absolutely not, never. That's not my place.
Do you all think the choice to have a family or expand your family is a left versus right issue?
No.
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 I think both sides of the aisle need to have those conversations.
I think at the end of the day, it's a personal decision. It shouldn't be you don't want a family because of the party you align with.
What do you all think about the American dream?
It's no longer attainable.
It's not that we can't do it, but it's a lot harder to do it. We have a lot more obstacles in place than our parents did, especially our grandparents. They were able to be more of like that village per se.
But this generation still has hope for the next.
I would like to see people like living again, not just like surviving and being like, okay, I have to do these things to make ends meet, but, oh, I want to do this because I enjoy it.
And of course, there's not just one solution here, but despite their political differences, this group all agreed that most elected officials feel out of touch and disconnected from the experiences and priorities that Americans have, especially those trying to navigate this parenthood decision. We'll have an extended conversation up on our YouTube later today for folks to also check out.
Maya, this is such an interesting conversation, and you really went to a lot of different places with it. I mean, abortion, childcare, really so interesting having people from both sides of the political spectrum. I was wondering, you know, New York has free childcare, and that's this new initiative. And I'm wondering, you know, you had one of those guests talk about how there's this 3-year wait list for childcare in Louisiana. And I'm wondering if you could talk about, like, did this group say anything about things that would make it easier for them to have children?
Yeah, they said if there were systems in place that supported them openly and easily, that would help. So SNAP is one of those things that a lot of families use to get food and groceries. But how about medical care costs? Only some states have free childcare, and there's still a wait list for some of those programs. So a lot of them were hoping that in the future, maybe their elected officials are more representative and closer in contact to folks who are making that decision, so they really understand the stakes here and are dealing it with themselves.
So some of those things they want sound like policies that we might consider to be a little bit on the socialist side.
It sounds like it. Again, all of them are coming from different parts of the political spectrum, but they can agree that there is a need that's not being met. And so I think there's a lot of creative ways that those needs can be met, but the jury's really out on how to actually implement that for the everyday American.
So, Claire, we've ticked through all morning a variety of issues. They're going to help determine who wins at the midterms this November. But affordability is clearly number one. And this is such an important reiteration that for so many young people, basic, what was seen as before almost like a fundamental steps of the American dream, including perhaps buying a house, having kids, just right now they fear it may be out of reach. That's really, really important and potentially really motivating to go vote.
Yeah, and I think this whole conversation about affordability, it also underscores something else that's going on, and that is a distrust of anybody who's in government now. The frustration that people feel, the anger they feel at the situation they find themselves in, where they're playing by all the rules, they're working as hard as they can. That young woman who's going to school, who faces a 3-year wait list on childcare, who's having to get SNAP benefits to feed her children. Obviously, she is part of the American dream, and she is the doors being slammed in her face over and over again. These incumbents need to get out. And it's not just about town halls. It's also about sitting with people like this and making sure they understand the pain. It's one thing to talk about affordability. It's another to actually sit down with someone and talk about their budget and talk about where their money's going and talk about the obstacles they're facing. This whole thing about getting rid of incumbents has a lot to do with the frustration over the dysfunction of Congress and the complete failure of our current government to adequately address what these kids are facing. And it is a huge problem for us. And it's one of the reasons a lot of incumbents are going to get thrown out, and they're going to be younger people put in their place, because this sense that there's a disconnect. And I think it's fair. I think there is a disconnect.
MS Now reporter Maya Eglin, thank you so much for bringing that report to us. We appreciate it.